Welcome back to the channel, and today we're looking at the Middleton Made Knives Mini Ona. I forgot where I first saw this, but I'd never heard of Middleton Knives, so I checked them out. It's a USA made company, and he does mainly high-end kitchen cutlery. Some very, very beautiful stuff. They even have some YouTube videos of them doing some of the work in their small shop. I think it's in maybe North Carolina, South Carolina, one of those places. They have kind of like a small machine shop, and they make a couple other fixed blades. And I was scrolling, I found this one, and they had a larger version with titanium scales and the same blade and everything, but it's a good bit larger now. That one was sold out, and this one was available. And here recently I checked, and the bigger full-size Ona is back, but it's in this same configuration with the G10 and the same steel, and it's like 10 3/4 inches long. It's a beast. Now on their page, it says American made on it whenever you click on this one. So I don't know for sure. There's some things that kind of, the packaging definitely looks like Kaiser. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they do have the equipment to do this. Now, whether they could pull off something like this, being that, you know, they're not primarily a folder company, I don't know. So, like I said, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but if I ever do find out that they're claiming American made or US made and it's not, we'll have a follow-up video. Like I said, the bigger version's 10 3/4 inches long. The mini's still a good size. Comes in at 7.8 inches long with a 3.47 inch harpoon drop point blade. You can call it whatever you like. It kind of has that little harpoon area right here. I mean, up here in the front. Drop point, nice satin finish on it. Being that it's a low tip drop point, you have a decently robust tip. Even though you have that swedge that comes down, it still has a decent meat behind it. There's no jimping up top, but I didn't really find the need for it, even though they kind of market these as folding kitchen knives. So I think in that sense, you know, some jimping up here would have been nice. You know, if you're cutting something, your hands get wet, you don't want to be slipping and sliding. So you got to decide on that. They do have somewhat of a sharpening choil here. However, after I got done with the testing of this knife, I decided to sharpen it up just to kind of see how the steel acted when sharpened. It sharpened up very nicely. However, I don't know if I'll be able to show it. It is starting to widen back here because that's where that plunge starts. You can see how it starts to widen up back here. Something I can fix myself. I can just kind of do the same thing right here. Go out that way a little bit more, but it would have been nice to come like that from factory. This is going to be a highly versatile blade shape. You have that low tip, sits below the center line of that pivot. So you'll have very gradual belly to that tip. I can still use that tip to do drag cuts, do very fine precision cuts. And you have just the right amount of belly to where you should be able to do cutting on a flat surface rather easily. This one has a decent height flat grind that comes down to around 17 thousandths behind the edge, which is nice. And the edge bevel is 18 degrees per side. So that's what I like to see. I test so many knives that are like 22 degrees, 24 degrees per side, and they just don't cut that good. They might be thinly ground, but they got thick edge bevels, and it just doesn't make sense. I also love how that edge sits below the handle scales. So when I'm in a pinch grip like this, that means I can get full contact from heel to tip with a cutting board or flat cutting surface. Whenever your edge is up here and you go to do that, then your fingers are hitting the cutting board, and usually you only get this forward portion onto what you're cutting. This way, I can hold it in this little pinch grip. I can do rocking motion cuts if I want. I can do slicing motion cuts. It just makes it a lot easier, especially if you do plan on using this for doing food prep and stuff like that. Now, it's definitely not going to replace a kitchen knife because it's got 0.125 inch blade stock, so that's pretty thick, especially, you know, for a folding knife. And a kitchen knife that's extremely thick. Well, enough talk about the blade. Let's see how it performs. My knife came pretty darn sharp out of box, and I was pretty happy to see that it had pretty good edge geometry. I mean, fairly thin behind the edge and a fairly thin edge bevel. I'm so used to seeing 22 degrees per side, 24 degrees per side, and they just don't perform good at all. This one is slicing very well, And only thing I think they could have made it better with if it was thinner blade stock. That's about it. But now we're testing the ergos on this piece of pine, checking out that edge, just that fine edge. And boy, is it making the fine curls so effortless. Probably one of the easiest knives I've done this with in a while, as far as the shavings go. And then in a little while, when I start speeding it up, I'm putting more pressure into it as I go. And the handle is a lot more comfortable than I anticipated. Because at first it kind of feels a little strange in hand, just the way they got that large choil in the front. But I'm able to get a lot of force into the wood. I don't have anything poking or prodding me. The milled clip staying out of the palm of the hand. That's not creating any hot spots. I could have done this for a lot longer. It was, like I said, nice and comfortable. You can easily use that tip thanks to that low tip. Make drag cuts very easily and precisely. And then chopping on a flat cutting surface is an absolute breeze because of how low that edge sits below the scales. I like knives that have this type of profile. It's so much easier to do pretty much all cutting, you know, especially in that pinch grip like this. Look at it blasting. I did a much longer piece of denim here just to test this one a little bit extra. And now we move to the 1/2 inch twisted sisal rope. And this is where this knife just absolutely kind of blew me away, because it is making these cuts so nice, so effortless. And I mean, some of it has to do with the extra mass because of that very wide blade. I think the blade stock's like 0.125. It would have been great at like 0.10 or under. But even with the thicker blade stock, because it's ground decently thin and it has that 18 degrees per side edge bevel, man, this thing's performing very, very well. Even after I run out of the initial piece of rope I cut, it felt so good. It still felt almost like it did in the beginning. So I grabbed the piece I had for the next knife that I was testing after this one, just to see, you know, how long that edge felt as crisp as it does. I mean, most of these are push cuts. You could do slicing motion cuts. You could do drag through cuts if you wanted to. Perfect amount of belly. You know, all this was very, very easy. This is probably the most comfortable with this type of blade, is on a flat cutting surface, at least for me, I think. Doing the cardboard and stuff like that, no problem whatsoever, but this just feels natural and very, very easy to do. The pinch grip was very comfortable, and you can see that I'm just using that forward portion almost close to that tip. So after we do all this, I want to see what that edge is like. It still feels incredible, the entire edge, and that's usually not the case after I finish testing S35. I've had some that were still sharp, but they just didn't feel that great. This one felt awesome. Now let's take a look at that edge. It still feels good. Yeah, still got a really good edge to it. Nice slow cut. So see right there by that tip. Yep. I was thinking, now the tip's definitely not as sharp as it was when it started, but I could definitely strop that back up to hair shaving sharp. We have a blade hole for the deployment, so you can easily do that reverse flick and it comes flying out. Very smooth action, riding on ceramic ball bearings with a ceramic detent ball. You can also thumb flick it rather easily. And being that you have that little bit larger of a thumb hole, you can slow roll it pretty easily as well. Even though this one has a pretty stout detent in order to keep that wide blade in the scales. No shakeout. It's like I said, nice and positive. Perfectly centered blade. Now, I said this in the first impressions video. Mine does have a little bit of detent stick. You can hear it. And all that probably is a little bitty burr around the detent hole. And I can either let it knock itself off by, you know, opening and closing it a bunch of times, or I can go in there and take the cornerstone of my Spyderco Sharp Maker and put it in that hole and just kind of deburr that edge. You don't want to go too crazy with that, something like that, because you don't want to widen that hole. You just want to knock the burr off. Not a big deal. I'd rather have a detent stick than detent slop. This one's nice and tight in there. And like I said, very good action. Now onto the handle area, you have Peel Ply G10 that offers a little bit of traction. It's not, you know, aggressive or anything, but it offers just the right amount. I like it like that. I don't want it to tear up my fingers or my pockets. The Torx T8 for the pivot. Unfortunately, they have T6 for the body screws and the clip screws. You have a milled titanium pocket clip. However, it is tip up right hand carry only. It does function nicely, goes in and out of the pocket nicely. Got a nice bit of spring to it and a decent bit of ramp underneath there. All my jeans fit it nicely. Now it is very wide in the pocket, so it's going to be a pocket hog, but there is no flipper tab on the side to get in the way if you drop anything in there like a pen or a wallet or a phone. That's one decent thing about just having that thumb hole. Yeah, flow-through construction, 2 hourglass standoffs in the back right here. There's your stop pin right there. So you can easily blow this out with some compressed air or with a Q-tip or something just to get any gunk out of there. Now, there is no internal milling, which is kind of surprising because it's not, I don't find it to be heavy, but it's definitely adding some extra weight. Coming in at 5.019 ounces. Now, you know, it is a little bit heftier than it needs to be, but it is a pretty wide blade and a decent thickness in that blade, so that kind of makes sense. During my testing or before the testing, when I saw this large choil area right here, those are usually not the most comfortable because, you know, these two fingers are trying to fit in there and they don't always fit. Now, I have to say, I found myself kind of choking back a little bit, and it was good like this. Then when I wanted to choke up like this, it was fine. This finger does end up landing on here. It wasn't terrible or anything. I could definitely feel the little hump, but it's not sharp. They do have it rounded over, so it wasn't bad. Being that you have a fairly neutral handle, pretty much all the grips are pretty comfortable. This one is okay. It's not the best, but it's not the worst either. And the reverse gas station knife fighting grip, that one's pretty comfortable as well. But I will say this one, I thought it was pretty darn comfortable, especially like I said, when I was choked back like that. The lockup on my knife is sitting at around, I'd say 40% or so. Good access to that lock bar because this cutout comes down lower. And it just knocked off the edge of those scales. It's not uncomfortable to disengage. I don't think, at least. And like I said, I use that portion of my thumb a good bit. Your lockup on the knife, very tight lockup, no up and down play, and no side to side play at all, none. Very tight lockup. Quick size comparison with the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. It's right in the middle of those. Pretty similar in overall length to the Kaiser Sheepdog and the Vosteed Raccoon Cleaver. Lastly, I felt that it had a lot of similarities to the O-Knife Zilla as far as that blade and the way it felt in the hand. And there it is up against the American Blade Works Model 1. Now for my nitpicks and complaints. First, like I said earlier, I wish I would have extended this sharpening choil a little bit more. However, it's not that big of a deal. It's easy to fix. And I think the biggest thing for me is the price, because it's $200, which, you know, like I said, if it is USA made, I don't think it's that far out of line. I think it would have been better at, say, 160, maybe 170 at tops. I say that because the American Blade Works Model 1, this is like a V4 or something like that with the S35VN. Well, this one's $200. And it's a much more dialed in folding knife. It's pretty much a mid-tech. You can, you know, look at the screws. You can tell those are in-house made screws. Has a titanium liner. Now they come with CPM MagnaCut steel, and these are Rockwell properly, and they're still $200. So, you know, it is a wider blade, but it is a little bit smaller of a knife. Go butt to butt. I mean, I don't know if you can tell that. It's not that much bigger, but, you know, like I said, I just don't think it's on this level. You know, I could tell that Michael, the owner of American Blade Works, really puts a lot of time and effort into research and development, listening to suggestions, and trying to make an excellent product. and he's very receptive over emails. So, if none of that stuff that I talked about is deal breakers for you, then yes, I can absolutely recommend the knife, because in a performance standpoint, my particular sample performed great. You know, it got me excited about S35VN again. You know, I know I've had other S35VN that got me excited, but it's been a while. You know, all the other ones are kind of blah. But this one, yeah, did it. The action's beautiful. It's nice and snappy, comfortable. I love the look of it. I love the versatility of it. And I'm really contemplating on getting the big boy. Now, the big boy is a chunker. This one's, 5 ounces I'm fine with, especially when I'm wearing pants, jeans. The other one, the 10 3/4 is like 8.6 or something ounces. Now, that's a hefty knife. I got several of them at least that heavy. Most of them are cold steels, but I still think I may try that one out. I love the overall profile of this, and I see how useful they are from testing several knives with, this somewhat same blade shape, minus maybe the harpoon. So let me know what y'all think about it. Have you ever heard of Middleton Knives before? I know a few of y'all, whenever I did this first impressions, a few of y'all have already have heard of them. And like I said, unless I find out otherwise, we will say that it is a totally USA made knife. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Hey.